Hello, and welcome to Learning from Nature, the Biomimicry podcast with me, your host, Lily Ehrman. This series is all about highlighting biomimetic and bio-inspired companies that are leading the way in helping to create a life-friendly future with nature as mentor and measure. I want to showcase the people doing the hard work of translating nature's genius to human design and ultimately celebrate the potential of this field. In this special episode and series finale, we will get into the nuts and bolts of how you can begin your biomimicry design journey, what the Biomimicry Institute Launchpad is all about, and why this practice is such a powerful pathway. My guest today is Dave Hutchins. Dave manages the Biomimicry Institute's Launchpad program, supporting scientists, engineers, designers, and artists as they take their nature-inspired ideas into the world. He has a background in environmental engineering with a PhD in materials science, where his research focused on remediating mining-impacted waters. Dave is also an artist and activist who is passionate about science communication and the intersection of art and science. He loves wild landscapes, hot springs, and cycling. He founded the community bicycle shop Bike Lab in Butte, Montana, where he lives. Dave, thank you so much for joining today. I would like to have you introduce yourself and please include your pronouns.
Sure, yeah. Thanks for having me, Lily. I'm Dave Hutchins, he, him, and I am the Launchpad Program Manager at the Biomimicry Institute.
And what is the Biomimicry Institute?
We are a nonprofit based in Montana, but really spread all over the country and operating all over the world. Just trying to help facilitate bring biomimetic solutions to life.
I've personally been following the Institute for many years and just admire all the work you all do in the world for encouraging this kind of perspective and practice and supporting at every stage, education, K through 12, undergraduate, and even those folks that are working in companies and kind of trying to get off the ground their biomimetic idea. I am a big admirer of the Institute. And so thanks for joining me and being part of that organization.
Yeah, thanks for being part of the network.
So I'm curious maybe just to talk a little bit about your background, what got you here and, professionally, maybe like in this role as Launchpad director, but also even before that, like maybe what led you into the direction of biomimicry or the Institute?
Sure, yeah. It's, I guess maybe a little bit of a long story. I read Janine's book way back when it came out and was very inspired by it, but I was a bit of a late bloomer professionally. In a past life, I was a welder and a machinist and did that for a long time, but had a sort of a revelation in my mid-30s that I was putting a lot of toxins into my body and that humans were putting a lot of toxins out into the environment, and decided to move to Butte, Montana and study environmental engineering. So if you don't know Butte, it is a mining town and was impacted by, more than 100 years of poor mining practices, and it's very polluted. So it's a great place to study environmental engineering. And then I ended up going into material science and got my PhD in material science. I was researching some particles for pulling metals out of mine-affected waters. And did a lot of research in that realm, funded by NSF and EPA and Department of Defense and even some National Institute of Health, and was teaching environmental engineering and was including biomimicry in my courses, as well as in my research. So looked to the Institute for curriculum ideas and things, and saw they were hiring in sort of a entrepreneurial support capacity, which was something I was growing interested in with my own ventures, and jumped on the chance.
That's amazing. I love that you have a bit of a different background for biomimicry that potentially gives you a lot more perspective of the importance of practicing this kind of life-friendly design. That's really cool.
Yeah, have some great examples to draw on when I'm sort of telling people about the power of a multidisciplinary approach. Just for instance, those particles I was working on, we were using a very nasty chemical concoction to coat them and to keep them durable. And I had a chance encounter at a conference with a biochemist who said, "Hey, have you considered a different idea for your coating. I've been working on this material inspired by bone, hydroxyapatite. And so we worked together and collaborated and found a much less toxic green chemistry way to coat these particles. And not only was it environmentally benign, it actually worked better than the chemical one we were using.
That's amazing. That's really cool. I feel like there's so many opportunities for that, and it's amazing to hear about it happening real time, with chemistry and learning from how nature does chemistry. That's really hopeful. Brings me a lot of hope for the future.
Yeah,
That
me
it
too.
that it not only will work and replace those, but potentially work better. I love that.
Yeah.
So you're interested and you work in this realm of kind of entrepreneurial startup incubator space. And I say that because I think a couple years ago I was familiar with the Biomimicry Institute's programs. And I know you all have kind of gone through a little bit of a shift. And so I think I'd like you to explain the two different programs that the Institute has for folks who are kind of trying to get their biomimicry idea to life and just supporting them in that journey. What do those programs look like? What's the difference between them?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm working in our innovation initiative. We also have, other programs that are supporting people just dipping their toes in the water. But in our innovation department, we have two programs. So our Launchpad program and our Ray of Hope. And I guess I'll just jump right into it. The Launchpad, the one that I manage, is our earlier stage incubator. So these are individuals largely. Sometimes they're already working in a team, but largely individuals at the ideation stage. And we recruit and bring together around 20 of them each year. It's very multidisciplinary. We recruit scientists, engineers, designers, artists, architects at various stages. We had last year we had folks from 18 years old up to 65 years old, and really at lots of different stages of development of their ideas and their careers. It's a 10-week program. It's mostly virtual, but we do convene everybody in a wild place. I bring them here to Montana. It's kind of like a fun summer camp for innovators. And then the rest of the program is virtual. We lean on entrepreneurship as a potential for implementing these ideas, but also recognize there's other pathways to implementation. So licensing intellectual property or entrepreneurship or through academia. And it's a very transformative experience for these folks. And like you said, these programs have been shifting. This one's been evolving too. That's how we're running it right now, as this very multidisciplinary approach with individuals. But we also have our Ray of Hope program that has also been evolving and is actually going through a major shift right now. So this was, for the last few years, our Ray of Hope prize. It had been run as a competition. And this is for teams that are pretty well on their way business-wise. So pre-seed to Series A stage. And we bring together around 10 teams. And it was previously sort of similar, a 10-week virtual program with a week together in the wild. But we saw a need and a unique fit for us that we could expand this to a longer fellowship. So we're expanding this to a 6-month fellowship. It still will have that week together in the wild and some time at New York Climate Week. But now everybody's going to get some non-dilutive capital and lots of in-kind services that go along with it too.
Thank you for kind of walking me through those. I'd like to back up to the Launchpad program and just ask a question around how you do the recruitment for that. I'm just curious because are, folks allowed to apply? Do they reach out? What kind of is the process for that? Do you do all the research and reach out and invitation process, or can folks kind of do that as well?
Yeah, it's a mix of both. The application is open to anyone. It starts generally right around the first of the year, so January 1st each year, and runs through February. So 2 months of open applications should be easy to find on our website. You can click an apply here button. But we do a lot of direct outreach to a lot of our partners as well. So a lot of that are the labs and centers at universities around the world and our just network in general. We reach out as broadly as we can. We cast the widest possible net. And the application is a pretty low lift in the first phase. And then we ask for some more information for those that seem qualified. And we try and keep it a pretty manageable application where we're just asking them to show off some of their best work. A lot of the applicants are maybe in the grad student sort of stage, but again, we see applicants from undergrad all the way to tenured professors and beyond. So really wide range and across all sort of fields as well.
Okay, great. And can you share a little bit more about the benefits of a program like Launchpad for folks who are in this space or wanting to kind of take their idea to the next step?
Sure, I guess. I mean, I think the biggest benefit is just getting together with like minded people to explore ideas, explore successes and challenges. So that's probably the biggest benefit. A lot of times these folks are sort of feel like they're working alone on these big ideas, and to find their people can be really powerful. But beyond that, we try to provide a lot of practical skills as far as navigating entrepreneurship, navigating intellectual property and technology transfer, things like communication and storytelling and team building.
Are you excited about the potential of biomimicry and want to begin your own journey in this field? Enroll in the Biomimicry Practitioner Program and kickstart a nature-inspired future. Use my code LEARNINGFROMNATURE, that's all one word with no spaces, to save $300 when you sign up for the full practitioner program. Just head over to www.learnbiomimicry.com/learningfromnature. And is there funding associated with this, or is that separate as part of the Ray of Hope prize?
Right. The Launchpad doesn't have any funding for the individuals attached to it, but the program is free and all the travel and associated costs of the retreat are all included as well.
So it's less getting an idea to market and more just supporting that ideation process and that community.
It is. And, we're really trying to identify the brightest folks with the most potential for impact, with the hope that they're going to take these ideas and the support back to their own ecosystem and have sort of a ripple effect.
Amazing. And then can you provide a little bit more information around the Ray of Hope prize process and application?
Sure. It's, I guess, sort of similar. We open applications in March, so they'll be opening here soon, actually. And again, it's an open application. Anybody can apply. There are some sort of guidelines about where they should be business stage wise, but really not a lot of hard and fast rules. So open application, but then we also do active recruiting. We're constantly watching the literature and the sort of state of the art out there and reaching out directly to companies, startups, but also to potential nominators who also have their eye on them.
And so I think this has been clarified a little bit in your explanation, but I'm curious how the Biomimicry Institute, in maybe both of these capacities, the Launchpad and Ray of Hope, how the Institute supports people and companies in this process, like idea to prototype and then prototype to market, of what that process or pipeline kind of looks like. And you have shared a little bit more about that, but in general, I think like how does the Institute play a part in that?
Sure. Yeah. Those programs are potentially sort of sequential there, that the Launchpad is really for those folks who are working towards a prototype potentially. And to be clear, it's not always products they're working on. Sometimes it's services or even, systems change on a pretty large scale. So it's not always a physical prototype or anything like that. We really in the Launchpad are just helping them explore the ideas. So that can be through reading and discussion. We read things like Robin Kimmerer's Braiding Sweetgrass and Adrienne Marie Brown's Emergent Strategy. So things that have maybe very little to do with biomimicry, but everything to do with it, but just getting folks together to explore big ideas and then helping them with their own storytelling, either talking about the science that can be difficult to communicate, but also delving into like speculative fiction and what's possible in the world, and really bringing them together, helping them feel that power of multidisciplinarity, and hoping that they'll go home and either connect with this network that we're already connecting them to or find the other components of the teams that they need in their own ecosystems. We're also supporting them through, again, exploring entrepreneurship. And a lot of times that looks like a sort of a typical lean startup methodology where you're going through a sort of customer discovery. A lot of the hard science folks think they have a great idea, and if they just release it to the world, it would take off. And usually that's not the case. There's a lot more work to it. And I was definitely one of those engineers. So that was part of what got me excited about working in this space.
Yeah, you've lived it.
And then for Ray of Hope, again, they're a little later stage. They probably already have a prototype or a pretty well-defined business plan. And we're helping them with things like crafting a pitch for specific audiences, be that investors or partners, helping them communicate their science in general. We've produced a number of these really great short animations that are really useful for these startups to communicate with the non-science folks especially, and they're really great for us too in education. And we're helping them navigate things like impact and sustainability metrics and other like nuances of business that they might not be seeing elsewhere.
I'm glad you mentioned those little videos because I use those all the time. And if there are educators or anyone in that space listening, they should definitely check them out on YouTube. The Biomimicry Institute has a YouTube channel where they have what they're like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, maybe
Yep.
great animated shorts around what the company is, what they were inspired by, what their product is, the impact it can have. And it's just really succinct and really powerful.
Yeah, we have another series of 10 of them coming out this year, and I'm really excited to be releasing them. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. And this is really cool, especially because I've been chatting with some of these folks who've started companies, and I'm pretty sure all of them have been Ray of Hope recipients. And I'd love maybe if you can share or offer us a peek into a company that you've worked with that you're really hopeful about, or able to share kind of details around that progress they've made in the Ray of Hope or the Launchpad, if it was just a scientist or somebody working in a lab, but just like a peek behind the curtain. What does that look like? And if you can give like a specific example of how the Institute has supported that, be really cool.
Sure. I mean, I guess I'll just pick one sort of randomly that'll be our winner from this last year in the Ray of Hope, which was Sparksel. So they have developed a process for creating structural color. So if you don't know, in nature, often it's not sort of the pigments and dyes like we use in our industries. It's structure, it's surface features that alter the light and create these wonderful colors. So they were specifically inspired by this pollia berry, this berry that's got this beautiful sort of shimmering color. And they were able to create a process where they take waste cellulose and it self-assembles into this structural color that could potentially, replace a lot of these very toxic metal-laden dyes and other things, and is just beautiful, has the potential to be sort of iridescent and metallic. And I think the sky's the limit on where we could see this. It could be on something like a car panel, but it also could be something like makeup because it's totally environmentally benign and non-toxic. And this all came out of a lab in the UK. One researcher, Silvia Vignolini, has created a bunch of really interesting technologies around structural color. One of her postdocs created this process and ran with it, and I expect to see really big things from them. And we've supported them in a number of ways, connecting them to our network, connecting them to potential industrial partners, creating one of these videos that I actually haven't seen theirs yet, but I'm really excited to. But yeah, we try and support them in a number of ways.
I think that's especially crucial for the biomimicry field because, I've talked to a few folks. And it can be really isolating to have this idea or want to do biomimetic design or be doing it in your own lab, but feel disconnected from the rest of the community. So I think it's really great that the Launchpad really focuses on, bringing these people together and realizing that there's so many others that are doing similar processes or similar design approaches that are life friendly.
Yeah, it's been really powerful and gratifying to watch because it can be the difference between like somebody who's like going to give up and just go join industry. And instead they're like, no, I'm going to start a biomimetic lab and run with this. So it's fun to watch.
Yeah. So from the folks that you've worked with, what are some of these most, I don't like the term successful all the time, but what are these companies that you're working with or part of the Launchpad or part of the Ray of Hope Prize that have gotten to this stage? What are they doing well that other folks can maybe learn from?
That's a great question. almost all of them are starting with some like really hard science and technical skills and, a great idea. But what they've done is they've expanded that science skill set and included business and marketing and communications. And sometimes they're doing that themselves. They're becoming really well-rounded, but oftentimes they're building a team that can support them. And, ideally, and the most successful ones, everybody on the team understands the technology, but they're relying on each other's like specific skill sets as they move forward. And I guess a couple other things that I see among the successful ones, they have a clear problem that they're addressing. And of course, we have no shortage of challenges that we're facing. But if you can define a clear problem and then do that market research to show that there's the potential to commercialize something, that's where you really have that niche where you can move forward.
Yeah. And on the flip side of that, what are some of the main hurdles that these companies or these people or, these teams are facing if they're doing biomimicry well? And, maybe that involves not approaching it super strategically at the beginning, but what are some of these hurdles that you've seen from this spectrum of folks that you've worked with?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we are restrained by the capitalist system that we're in, and I think securing funding is always the biggest challenge. A lot of our teams are in that sort of valley of death where there's a lot of funding and support in academia and potentially off in the future from industry. But in between there, it can be hard to keep going and to keep your funding stream coming where you can make that leap. So access to funding is a big challenge. Scaling up can be a really big hurdle. There's a lot of great ideas that work at the milligram scale in a lab, but then when you try and do it to satisfy an industrial partner who needs tons of it, it can be really difficult to scale up.
Are you seeing, and this just reminds me because after my master's in biomimicry, I kind of dipped my toes in the entrepreneurial space, and the funding component was the scariest part of it, just because there was either a lot of interest, but they wanted something different, or they had no idea what I was doing. And so I'm curious if you've seen the funding ecosystem change at all in your time working with the Institute and see more, startup funders, venture capital or whatever that is from a variety of sources. If you've seen the interest shift as kind of the demand or interest in biomimicry globally has grown, I would like to think so, but I'm curious kind of from the inside what you've noticed.
Well, yeah, definitely. I have to admit that the sort of investment side of it is I'm a little out of my depth there, but I do think that we're seeing more venture capital that is interested in impact, both societal and environmental. So I think that's a good thing for biomimetic technologies and entrepreneurship. But what I am more familiar with and have been seeing a distinct trend is in sort of federal funding and programs like SBIR, STTR, and other, NSF mechanisms and things where they are definitely paying closer attention to biomimicry and nature-based solutions in general. And there seems to be a lot of funding right now.
That's great to hear. Maybe just a awful funding application if it's if it's a government-based grant. I've applied for a couple NSF grants, so I know the hurdles that can face.
Oh, me too. They are awful. I think my record was an 88-page NSF proposal
Oh
that
my
got
God.
shot down. And then the reporting is just as difficult.
Yeah.
So,
If you can get through that though, there is some good
yeah.
funding out there. Yeah, thanks for kind of shedding a light on some of that. I think for folks who are in the science space or that kind of hard research space, it's hard to understand like what those next steps can look like in the funding space if you want to take it to the next level. And like, I think you mentioned the valley of death. I think that's so real. And I'd maybe like to have you elaborate on that a little bit because I think a lot of folks have experienced that. And I'm curious if you've noticed any components to getting out of it from the folks that you've worked with. Like, how can we either support people who are kind of making a new idea happen or getting out of academia and wanting to get into the market and like industry space? What can that look like? Is there hope? Are there more opportunities now? Or like, yeah, I guess I don't really have a specific question, but I think it was important that you mentioned the valley of death and what that space, that kind of emptier space can look like and how it can be really scary. Is there hope? And what could that look like?
Sure. Yeah. No, I think there is a lot of hope. My first piece of advice, if you're thinking about spinning out from academia, would be stay in academia as long as you can. Use those resources, use those free, excellent laboratories, do everything you can and work with your technology transfer and your PI in academia and try and milk that for as long as you can, because those resources are hard to come by once you're out. But there are more and more really high quality resources for folks in this sort of position. And a lot of times it looks like an accelerator, and there are so many accelerators right now, lots of different models, lots of different things that they bring to their cohorts. So it's worth like reading into the details and seeing what they offer and what they're going to ask for back. But there are a lot of opportunities out there, as well as sort of incubator spaces, things like New Lab, who are supporting startups in a few different spaces. And yeah, I think there are a lot of resources, and getting connected to these sort of networks where these entities are coming together. So there's lots of conferences and informal networks that you can tap into and find out about these resources, and as well as prizes and things. We have a lot of people who are realizing that we have some enormous pressing challenges that current technologies are not addressing. And so the people are getting creative. They're giving away hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in these sort of prize competitions and technology accelerators. So I think there are a lot more opportunities now than 10 years ago. And I hope we see so much success from them that it keeps going.
And this is a perfect segue into my next question. Where do you see or envision the Biomimicry Institute programs, these incubator style programs, both maybe Launchpad and Ray of Hope, in the next 5 years, potentially in the next 10 years? Like, what does that look like? What does that runway look like?
Sure. I guess I hope that they continue to evolve and iterate as the landscape sort of change, as we have been. But I would love to think that as our participants achieve big success along the way, that they start to give back to the community. And maybe it looks something like an evergreen fund where we are able to provide some of that bridge funding to get across that valley of death to these great ideas that might not otherwise get out of the lab. I do think there will always be a niche for supporting people with new great ideas. I don't foresee us solving all the problems anytime soon, but I'd love to think that it would be sort of self-sustaining.
That reminds me when I was kind of, again, dipping my toes in the entrepreneurial space and then quickly realized it wasn't for me. I was dreaming of, what could a venture capital firm or fund look like if it was entirely biomimetic focused? Like it was all these people coming together and pooling their money to support just biomimicry companies. I feel like that'd be really cool. So the fact that you voiced that too is awesome. I'm hoping it'll happen. We're voicing
Yeah,
it
me
into
too.
existence.
I'd love to think about what biological strategies there are out there for pooling resources, because I'm sure there's some great examples.
Yeah, that'd be cool. And my last question for you today, Dave, is what's bringing you hope and joy?
That's a great question. I really love how indigenous knowledge is being woven in with biomimicry these days. I can tend to be fairly misanthropic, and when I think about how humans can be a part of nature and a part of these ecosystems in a reciprocal fashion, I draw hope from that. And I really appreciate folks that are bringing that kind of knowledge into these spheres.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I totally agree. I'm kind of in that same headspace too. Like, how do I learn from that perspective and really weave it into my own approach to biomimicry? It's been a huge learning moment and opportunity for me recently as well.
Yeah.
Amazing. This was a great little short snippet that's going to be a perfect cap on our company series. So I'm really happy that you were able to join today and just share about some of these programs. I'm curious, kind of as a last opportunity, if you have anything to share as far as upcoming deadlines or ways people can get involved. You mentioned the Launchpad is early in the year, and then Ray of Hope is a little bit later.
Mhm.
And then people can learn about both those programs on the Biomimicry Institute website.
Yep. Biomimicry.org.
And I also do a quick plug for Ask Nature, which is hosted by the Biomimicry Institute. It's a great site that I use all the time. I think a lot of it's directly linked to folks who are doing the research and creating ideas. It's a great database of biological strategies and innovations inspired by them. Anything else that you want to share as far as ways to get involved or upcoming events, anything?
I guess maybe I would say, a lot of people write asking how they can get into biomimicry or have a career in biomimicry. And I would suggest integrating biomimicry in wherever you're working, in whatever field you're in, whatever projects you're working on. I think there's potential to look to nature's genius in everything we do. And so I would love if that got out into the world, that you don't need to necessarily focus right on biomimicry. You can integrate biomimicry as a practice in whatever you're working on.
Yes, so true. That's a great reminder. And I was asked that a lot too when I was working at ASU, all the folks who are thinking about the master's degree or just kind of wanting to shift. And I'm like, well, you don't always have to shift. You can work it in. And that's the beauty of it. It's applicable in any space, literally any space. Thanks for tuning in. This is a quick reminder that we have some really awesome nature nerd merch like shirts and stickers so you can help support the podcast and look cool on your next hike. These were custom designed by my friend and incredible artist, Sarah Williams, and they showcase the amazing range of unique organisms here on Earth. You can grab yours at learningfromnature.earth/merch. I also want you all to know how much I appreciate every review, rating, recommendation, and support, as you are all helping biomimicry reach more people. Together, we can not only imagine, but create a beautiful world with life at the forefront and guiding the way. This episode was brought to you by Learn Biomimicry. So often I get asked, how do I take biomimicry to the next level? While there are a few university degrees out there, I understand not everyone has the time, money, or ability to commit to years of studying. That's where Learn Biomimicry comes in. They offer a bespoke course called the Biomimicry Practitioner Program. It's part-time, purpose-built for working professionals, and expertly guides you to become a confident practicing biomimic. And the best part? You choose your own project, so your learning meets you where you are. Advance your career and become a biomimicry practitioner with Learn Biomimicry. All of my listeners save $300 when you purchase the Biomimicry Practitioner Program. Head to www.learnbiomimicry.com/learningfromnature, or just tell them that Lily sent you. Happy learning!